Well, as Zenobia mentioned, this is International Women's Day. It's celebrated on March 8th every year, and this year's theme is Each for Equal. Each for Equal. We've got some examples up here. The campaign this year says an equal world is an enabled world. Individually, we're all responsible for our own thoughts and actions all day, every day. We can actively choose to challenge stereotypes, fight bias, broaden perceptions, improve situations, and celebrate women's achievements. Absolutely. This year is also the celebration of the 100th anniversary of women's right to vote. 100 years, ladies. 100 years that we've had the right to vote. Thank you to all the Thank you to all the suffragettes who stayed the course and led that change. And it was interesting looking back through some of the history of what occurred during that time, and women came to mind like Susan B. Anthony, of course, and her close friend Elizabeth Stanton. And they worked not only on women's rights, but on the abolition of slavery. The two women met in 1851. If you recall, the Civil War was 1861 to 65. So during the Civil War time, when they were working on abolition of slavery, they put women's voting on the sideline. They didn't focus on that any longer. They just focused on the slavery piece of it. And then slavery was abolished in January of 1865. Women did not receive the right to vote until 1920. It took a while. It took a while longer for that to happen. And there was a lot of courage and dedication of those women and men. There were a lot of men involved in that movement as well to bring that to fruition. And again, thank you to all of our ancestors for the courage and the dedication to that change in collective consciousness. That's what we witnessed, was a change in the collective consciousness of America, both in the abolition of slavery and in women getting the right to vote. Those were big shifts on the timeline of our consciousness. So this month, we here at Centers for Spiritual Living are celebrating the Divine Feminine, and the CSL theme is our living legacy, and my talk today is Unity in Diversity. Unity in Diversity. That sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? Because unity is undivided, and diversity means variety. Seems like a paradox. Ernest Holmes, the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living, the author of The Science of Mind, he says thought taps the same principle. Each uses the same law, is inspired by the same spirit, but each draws forth a different result. We each draw a different result. Here is multiplicity proceeding from unity. We are all one in the wholeness of the one, and yet we're individualized expressions in the consciousness of God, expressing individually as only we can. Thank goodness, right? Thank goodness. It's the same Play-Doh. It just takes a different form based on what we desire to make. Well, I have to admit, I did struggle a little bit with the direction of this talk and what I was going to bring forward and talk with us about today. I totally understand and support the celebration of women. I do favor absolutely gender equality. And when I look at Centers for Spiritual Living, when I look at the Science of Mind, I look at the principles and the practices that we have, it's grounded in equality. It always has been. It always has been. So what I decided to look at is some of our legacy, where we've come from, Science of Mind, New Thought, and our vision, where we are, and acknowledging some of our leadership today and where we're going. So I want to start in the beginning, so to speak, with New Thought and go way back. And one of the prominent female teachers and leaders that we had was Emma Curtis Hopkins. You've heard of her? Emma Curtis Hopkins. She lived between 1849 and 1925, and she's known throughout the movement as the teacher of teachers because she taught people like the Fillmores before they formed Unity. They were the founders of the Unity Centers. She taught Ernest Holmes before he formed religious science and the science of mind teaching. And so she was known as that teacher of teachers. She was a student in her before that time and a leader in Christian Science under the tutelage of Mary Baker Eddy. She's the woman that founded Christian Science. Emma Curtis was the publisher of the Christian Science Monitor, still in existence today. She was the publisher of that, the editor, I guess, of that. And Mary Baker had a policy. She said, "You only publish what I write." And over time, Emma Curtis began to get a deeper understanding of the teaching. So she began to do her own writings. And she decided that she was going to publish some of her writings along with Emma Curtis's writings. And Emma Curtis said, "No, you're fired." So she fired her. Unfazed, Emma went out and started her own teaching center. So her resulting 12 lessons that she came up with, that she taught everyone, are classic. If you've not read them, I highly recommend them. They're very classic teachings that we find woven throughout Unity, woven throughout Science of Mind. Everyone that studied with her was very much influenced by her and by her teaching. So when it comes to welcoming this allness of life that we teach about, what do we say? God is all there is. When it comes to welcoming that into our centers, New Thought is one of the first religious organizations in the West who ordained women as ministers. One of the first who did that. And also the very first licensed practitioner of religious science was Ernest's mother, Anna Holmes. She was the very first practitioner. Ernest believed in licensing practitioners way before he thought about licensing ministers. Way before that, because he believed in that healing consciousness of the practitioner. So Centers for Spiritual Living and New Thought in general teach unity, oneness, inclusivity. We welcome all faiths, all sexual orientation. We welcome all races, ages, animals, in protection of the environment. We always have. All are welcome here as a standard of care that we teach in our centers. All are welcome here. So as I was putting this all together, I was like, what am I going to talk about as far as the spiritual principle? And what continued to emerge was intuition and empathy. Intuition and empathy. And intuition is the access point, is our access point to the infinite wisdom of the divine mind. It's the portal through which we can communicate with spirit. Ernest Holmes defines intuition as God in us revealing to us the realities of being. And he suggests, just as instinct leads the animal, that intuition would guide us if we would allow it through us. It's the ability to know without any process of reasoning. The ability to know without any process of reasoning. Yet just know. You've ever been driving down the road and you look in your mirror, you don't see anything, but yet something, and you turn and there's someone right there in your blind spot. Something just told you to look a little more closely, right? Look a little more closely. That's our intuition, that knowing without any reasoning. Knowing without any reasoning. Each of us has this internal GPS guidance system supporting us for good, right actions, to be intuitively led, and the infinite wisdom of the divine mind through us. We each have that. I believe that many of the visionary leaders that we see today tap into that intuition, that it's part of their success. People like Oprah Winfrey and Ellen DeGeneres and Ariana Huffington. These women are successful, spiritual, and kind. And I believe that they've tapped into that divine intuition, and that has been part of their success process as they've allowed themselves to see the path unfold before them in their lives. Are you allowing divine mind in your life? Are you listening to Spirit? Are you trusting your intuition? Are you trusting your intuition on a regular basis? Do you feel it? Do you hear it? We all experience it differently, don't we? It's not come alike to any two people. It is something that everybody has. Everybody has intuition. You may not think that you do, but everyone does have it. Some have a little more faith in it than others. Some have more faith in it than others. And I think sometimes when we may question our own self-worth, we may question the divine, we may question the good of the universe. Do I live in a friendly universe or not? When we have those sorts of questions and doubts, we may doubt our intuition. We may doubt our intuition. If we forget that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, if we forget that, then it can be easy to fall prey to doubt and fear, can't it? It can be easy to fall prey to doubts and fears. So if, like I said, our intuition is the access point to the infinite wisdom of the divine mind, shouldn't we be cultivating this a little bit? Maybe figuring out how we can expand that, access that portal a little more. Holmes tells us in the very first paragraph of the textbook, very first, he says, revelation must keep faith with reason and religion with law, while intuition is ever spreading its wings for greater flights, and science must justify faith in the invisible. I think that's just a really powerful statement about how life works together. How life works together. Science must justify faith. I heard an interesting interaction between my favorite astrophysicist and Jimmy Fallon's, Neil deGrasse Tyson. He was on Jimmy Fallon the other night, and he suggested that the coronavirus is a giant experiment, not from a conspiracy theory kind of thing, but just a giant experiment to see if we are willing to trust science. If we're willing to trust science, and he suggested that if we're don't touch, wash our hands, do the elbow bump, and precautions that will let this bug die a natural death of inattention. And I thought that was interesting, coming from an astrophysicist who proclaimed loudly, I am not a virologist or whatever those guys are. That's not my science, but I am a scientist. And he took that perspective of a great experiment to see if we would listen to science and do these basic things that we know to do anyway, right? Is this new information to anybody? No, right? We know this. It was funny the other day, I heard on the radio, well, it's cold and flu season and get your Kleenexes or something. And I went, who designated? Who made that up? Who made that up? Why in Arizona would our beautiful, beautiful March be considered cold and flu season? That's just nuts. It's the most beautiful time of year we have in the whole 12 months, isn't it? So, phooey on that. Anyway, I thought it was interesting, though, that Neil was saying that. And then I saw a quote from the military that says, precaution, preparation, and no panic. And I like that. Because we do live in this world of effects. So sure, take precautions. Be prepared. Pay attention. But don't panic. God's your source, right? God's your source. So the other quality of the divine feminine that came up in this conversation with Spirit and I was empathy. And if empathy is the ability to understand and share the feeling of another, the ability to understand and share the feeling of another, coupling that with our intuition, do you think we could live from a place of loving kindness? Trusting the divine within us to guide us and our human emotions to penetrate that veil of separation, that perceived veil of separation that we have. How connected could we be in a place of loving kindness with our fellow human beings? Talking about leadership, I did share a few weeks ago some of my experiences at the Centers for Spiritual Living Convention in Denver. And as I thought about this talk, I thought about some of those presenters that were there and the women that were on stage. Current leaders like Reverend Dr. Kathy Hearn. She's the president of the dean of the Holmes Institute in San Diego. She's done so much for our movement. She was instrumental in a very, very large community in San Diego. But she was trained by one of our legacy leaders and trailblazers, Terry Cole Whitaker. Terry Cole had one of the biggest TV ministries we've ever seen back in the day of TV ministries and not live stream in San Diego. You know, it had thousands that would show up in the center on Sundays and then on the live stream, on broadcast, I guess it was. And then I was moved by the talk of our legacy. The woman that talked about our legacy in the past, and she talked about it from the perspective of Ernest Holmes in his Sermon by the Sea that he gave his last talk at Asilomar before his passing. It was a very powerful, powerful talk, and she took pieces of that and shared what our legacy as Centers for Spiritual Living was. And then delighted to hear the heart and professionalism of our new executive director, Reverend Sonia Byrne, and the way that she presented and how she's transforming our organization from the inside out, from the home office out, and the leadership and poise, absolute poise. We hear that word in Science of Mind, poise. And I saw it demonstrated in person by the outgoing leader, the chairperson of the Leadership Council for Centers for Spiritual Living, Tracy Brown. And it was it was almost palpable in the room, the feeling that you could feel in these women who were leading from kindness, inspiration. They led with heart, they led with power, they led with grace. There was just so much in that, and I am really feeling very good about the future of Centers for Spiritual Living because of what I'm witnessing in the leadership ranks these days there in Golden, Colorado. So I'm delighted about that. But I thought it was a demonstration of the divine feminine that we are seeing made manifest, So are you trusting your intuition? Are you trusting that voice of spirit that guides you, that leads you, that nudges you, that winks at you, that gives you the serendipitous coincidences in your life? Are you listening? Are you paying attention? Are you on the lookout for those? We talked in January about the 4 kingdoms of consciousness. Remember that? And kingdoms 3 and 4, through me, as me. Through me, as me. This includes listening to that still small voice within. This includes listening to that intuition of spirit, that gentle whisper. We don't have to be in total control of every aspect of our lives. Now, I know this is very scary for many of us who haven't yet figured out we cannot control every aspect of our life and everybody else's. Okay? Singing to the choir. And isn't it time to let go and let God? Well, we say that, but isn't it time to surrender into that? Our book of the month, Outrageous Openness, by Tasha Silver. She has a very powerful affirmation in there that I've been using this month, and I'm going to share it with you. She says, divine order says that the perfect solution to any problem is already selected if you allow yourself to be guided. She says, divine order says that there is a natural universal abundance that knows how to meet every need. Harmonizing with this force of love is the golden key to everything. And her affirmation is basically, I invoke divine order. I invoke divine order. And then following that with whatever the divine order area is in this situation, in the flow of good in my life, in the abundance in my life, in the perfect right solution, whatever it might be. She tells a story in the book about a woman that was going on and on and on in her car, one of her friends, about she has one cat, and she thought she needed a second one, but she didn't know if she wanted a second one. She thought she needed a second one, but she didn't know if she wanted a second. Maybe I need a second one. Maybe they want just on and on, right? And finally, Tasha goes, enough of this already. I invoke divine order to know the perfect right solution and decision on whether or not she should have one cat or two. They pull up to an intersection, and a woman walks across with 2 baby kittens. She went, that was quick. I invoke divine order, and I let go. That's the one, right? I let go. I don't invoke divine order and then hang on to my idea of what it has to be. I invoke divine order and I surrender to it. Because if it's divine order, how can I be smarter than that? How can I know more than that? How can I, in my limited, finite mind, have access to or even remotely imagine the possibilities that exist in the infinity of God? I surrender. I surrender. It's been a powerful process. It's a feeling process when you begin to do it and really feel the no attachment piece. It's very, very empowering. And then there's a lightness of being where we're looking around in expectation for what is Spirit going to show up as today. What is Spirit going to show up as today? Divine order. As we said last week, the divine feminine and the sacred masculine flow through everyone, each one of us. Both of those do. We are sourced of the divine. The divine is whole. Whole means all. All is male and female. All is feminine and masculine. Therefore, we each embody both of those qualities. The masculine is the assertive, the feminine is the receptive, the creative, the nurturing. The idea comes forward in our masculine tendencies, and then the nurturing of that, the tending of the soil, the nurturing of the plant as it is coming into fruition. That is the feminine. That is the feminine. Engage your intuition. Engage your intuition and let empathy guide your emotions and see what happens. I want to move into our practicing the principles this week. I only have 2, and Joe had a heart attack when he saw the slide because I have lots of tips under each one, but there's only two practicing the principles. Did you get them on 3 slides or 2 or 1? 2, all right. Number 1 is trust your intuition. Recognize when it speaks. Listen. It's not loud and demanding. It's not usually a gong. Once in a while, but not usually. Usually it's subtle. Usually it communicates very much in different ways for each one of us as well. Develop a regular meditation practice so that you can become aware of what Spirit's voice sounds like or feels like to you. That's where we remember dating God. Remember that from January? Our new boyfriends and girlfriends? Yeah? Okay, so this is where we build that relationship when we know the sound of its voice, the feeling of its touch. Devote time daily to give your intuition center stage. Maybe when you're driving someplace, okay, I'm going to trust my intuition and see what shows up for you. Or some other time throughout your day where you can actively focus on trusting your intuition, listening for your intuition. Asking clear questions. If we ask mamby-pamby questions, we get mamby-pamby answers, right? We have to ask clear questions. And if the answer's not coming in a way that we can understand, ask a clearer question. You know, if I'm getting a pain in my back because I'm not feeling real abundant and I don't understand what that means, that connection is, then I need to understand that not feeling abundant, that feeling lack in a different way, don't I? Because otherwise we focus on the pain and not on understanding. So ask a clear question to get a clear answer. And then this is an interesting point. Write down your answer. Research has shown that intuitive messages are subtle and conveyed from your consciousness if not captured in 37 seconds. How about that? You ever had one of those? It's not old age, guys. It's just your intuition. It's like, oh man, what was that I was saying? Write it down, because those things are going to pop away. Because it's just that subtle intuition that comes through that if we don't capture it, it's like catching the vision. It's a glimmer. And we catch it, write it down, document it, take action on it in some way that you can recall what it is. And the last one on trusting your intuition is to trust yourself. Trust yourself. The more faith you demonstrate in your intuition, the greater results you'll be. What we focus on expands, right? The same is true here. Test your intuition to trust it. All right, the second one is strengthen your empathy. Strengthen your empathy. Challenge yourself to get outside your comfort zone. Humility is a great teacher, right? If we are in an environment where we know exactly what to do and everything goes a certain way all the time, we can puff up and get very confident in everything we do, right? We can also lose touch with those around us. We can lose touch with those around us. There's a lot of assuming that starts to happen in that environment. If we get into an unfamiliar environment, we're not so proficient at it. We make some mistakes. We might look a little silly. We let go of our perfectionism and we become humble. Humility is a great teacher for empathy. Exploring different cultures beyond our state, within our state. If you're not traveling right now, go to a different part of town. Go into a different grocery store. Has anybody had that experience? You go to a different grocery store. Anybody else feel lost? Yeah, it's a crazy experience, isn't it? We are such creatures of habit. When we go into the grocery store that we go to all the time, we know where things are. The Fry's down here at 92nd and Shea, rearranged and remodeled. Oh my gosh, it's been a year. I still can't find my way around that store. It's like a new store every time I go into it, and it doesn't make a lot of logical sense to me. That's my thing. But when we change grocery stores or our environment changes, we have to pay more attention, don't we? We have to tap in more. We have to pay more attention. Ask for feedback in your relationship skills to those close to you and be willing to receive. Read literature that explores personal relationships and emotions. Talk to others about what it's like to walk in their shoes. If you experience someone that has a way different life than you do, become curious. Ask questions. What is it like to be in your space, your life, your world? Be inquisitive. So in the end, we are all one. We're all one. Using our intuition and empathy reminds us of our unity and our diversity and allows us to live from a place of loving kindness. I want to close this today by reading our global vision statement for Centers for Spiritual Living. I don't know if many of you have ever heard or read this statement, but I want to share it with us today. It just seemed appropriate for some reason for this talk to read this. So I invite you to just listen as our Centers for Spiritual Living global vision. We envision all people, all beings, and all life as expressions of God. We see a world in which each and every person lives in alignment with his or her highest spiritual principle, emphasizing unity with God and connection with each other. A world in which individuality and collectivity, which individually and collectively, we are called to a higher state of consciousness and action. We envision humanity awakening to its spiritual magnificence and discovering the creative power of thought. A world where each and every person discovers his or her own personal power and ability to create an individual life that works within a world that works for everyone. We envision a world in which we live and grow as one global family that respects and honors the interconnectedness of all life. A world where this kinship with all life prospers and connects through the guidance of spiritual wisdom and experience. We envision a world where personal responsibility joins with social conscious in every area of the political, corporate, academic, and social sectors, providing sustainable structures to further the emerging global consciousness. We envision a world where each and every person has enough food, a home, a sense of belonging, a world of peace and harmony, enfranchisement, and justice. We envision a world in which resources are valued, cared for, and grown, and where there is generous and continuous sharing of these resources. We envision a worldwide culture in which forgiveness, whether for errors, injustices, or debts, is the norm. We envision a world which has renewed its emphasis on beauty, nature, and love through the resurgence of creativity, art, and aesthetics. We envision a world that works for everyone and for all of creation. And so it is. Thank you for being here today, for being part of my life, for being part of this community, and for being part of achieving this Centers for Spiritual Living global vision. Shall we pray about it? Would you join me as we go into an affirmative prayer this morning? How good it is that we come together in spiritual community on this beautiful, beautiful Sunday morning, in the recognition that God is all there is. There is not God and something else. There is God and nothing. For God as all, is the source of all. It is love and joy, peace and harmony, prosperity and wisdom. It is intuition and empathy. It is the source of everything that exists. And I know that it is my source. It is that which I am sourced from, I am made manifest of. And because of this, I am the harmony, the life, the love, the joy, the peace, the intuition, the wisdom. As I know this unity of the divine, of myself, I know it for each one of us that has joined in community here this day, in the one, as the one, that we are each sourced of this divine wholeness of life, this life that breathes us, that is in, through, and as us. And so I speak my word for and about each one of us this morning, knowing the unity from which our multiplicity has come, our individuality has come. Even still, we remain that leading edge of consciousness, that leading edge of creation, as Spirit lives, moves, and has its being through us, as us. I know that each of us is the divine feminine and the sacred masculine in form, tapping into those qualities of the divine that serve us in each and every moment, whether it be in the masculine side or the feminine side. It's knowing that we are sourced of God in all things. And I know for anyone that has anything on their heart this day, that it may be feeling like a troubling thought to them, that as it is lifted into the consciousness of this prayer, that it is healed, that healing is revealed through them and as them, that whatever clarity needs to come is revealed. Whatever prosperity needs to flow, whatever creativity needs to be revealed, be it in career or creative aspiration, relationship, whatever it might be. I know that it's lifted here today. It is blessed in the wholeness and the unity of the collective consciousness of this prayer as we have come together this morning. And so it is in great, great gratitude and thanksgiving that I just simply release this into the action of law, the activity of mind, knowing that it is already done. The word spoken is the word made manifest. I let it go, I let it be, and we affirm together. And so it is.